Alaikum salam. How are you?
Ali, you okay?
Yeah, boring match just earlier on,
Do
so feeling a bit bored.
you know what? I was doing a tafsir class. So I was moving in and out of watching the game,
Mm.
but um, that last minute goal that we had to sell out, that seemed like a goal, didn't it? Or was it actual handball?
Yeah, they said it was handball, didn't it? From Mane's head to his hand. I couldn't particularly see it, but you know, um, don't really care. It wasn't
Yeah,
hard to get excited about a game that's not that important.
who's this Hassan? Hassan's asking about smoking cannabis. I haven't even started, man. He wants to smoke.
He's looking for the
That,
best deals.
is that Hassan Khalid or some other Hassan?
We'll find out. He'll let us know, inshallah.
طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله خير for everybody who's joining us, and inshallah ta'ala every time we do a session like this, it's our intention should be beneath the ayah فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask those people of dhikr if you don't know. And more generally in terms of السؤال مفتاح العلم. Questions is the key to knowledge. Dr. Sav, I want to ask you something on this, because there was a kind of like a little discussion that came up in Madrasa.
Uh-huh.
Should students be allowed to ask questions in class or not?
Are you asking specifically micro madrasa?
Well, that was where the discussion was, but more generally, should students be asked to allow? Should be asked to allow? Be allowed to ask
I mean, questions are beneficial because it becomes like a point where many other points can come out of it, and there are naturally some shy people in every class, and there's some people who are more like Bedouins and quite uninhibited at asking questions. But from that, the asking of other people, the shy people learn as well. So on the whole, generally, it's okay. But this is the caveat: if it becomes disruptive, and if the questions are not with sincerity, so it's not genuinely to learn or not genuinely to kind of gain clarification, but just to see what Shaykh Haroon says about this or that, or what Shaykh Ibrahim thinks about this or that, so that they can tell everyone else, then those kind of people need to be shut down. And some certain classes are not conducive to questions as well. Some classes you just need to be quiet and listen.
My take on this is that it depends who's asking the question more than anything else. If it's along with what you said about intent, the intention is significant, is essential. But if it's about learning faradain, essential knowledge, then there should be no limits to the question. People should be encouraged to ask the questions, and that's what these forums are for. If it's somebody who wants to become more grounded in knowledge and want to work through books of knowledge and so on, then questions should be limited. And then it's more about the teacher rather than the question. Wallahu alam. طيب, Bismillah, let's go through this.
Should we answer a few COVID questions since the vaccine is now out and available?
Do you know on that, a theme for the day? I was actually thinking, should we go for Christmas today or not? Or should we leave that till...
Leave that till Christmas.
Because because the next session we're doing is the 23rd. I'm sure by then, half of the Muslim world have already bought the halal turkeys and got the trees.
Yeah. Let's do some Christmas stuff. But let's get these. Let's just get the COVID one out of the way. Can you take the COVID vaccine? In past weeks, we've had people claiming that they're made out of dead babies, and past weeks, people have claimed that they've got pigs in them. In past weeks, even I think microchips. We've had a lot of claims, but Can people take it? Should I even be asking you?
What are you asking me for? It's not a.
That's what I'm saying. Should I even be asking you?
No, don't ask me. All I'm going to say is that I will try my utmost to avoid taking it, unless it's a case of getting locked up. No, I'm not going to touch it. But that's not illegal. And your fiqh answer, that's just me personally. I'm just going to avoid, because there is something sinister going on in the world at the moment. Wallahu a'lam. So yeah, go and ask some.
You've been spending too much time at Felicity House with all the conspiracy theorists.
I don't care what you say. There is something sinister going on, but that doesn't change the reality that there is something out there. There is some diseases getting spread around. Wallahu
a'lam. Inheritance question. You like inheritance.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite. Genuinely, it's my favorite part of fiqh, inheritance.
So this kind of like throws people a lot of time. If a sibling passes away, does their share of inheritance get waived or passed on to their children? So I'm assuming what it means is a sibling has passed away and then a parent passes away or something like that.
Where are you looking? I can't.
831. Is this before you joined? No, it can't be before you joined.
It might have been because I went out and then came back in.
All right. Okay. So he's asking, if a sibling dies, does the shared inheritance get waived or passed on to his children? So I'm assuming it's like the sibling died, and then when one of the one of the parents pass away, does the inheritance?
So instead of referring to sibling, if we say another way, let's say, for example, father dies and one of his children has already died. So I think it's the same point.
Yeah.
Then inheritors are only those who are alive at the point where the person dies. So if somebody had, in fact, this question came up a few days ago, and in fact I shared it with you. The question wasn't asking that. The question was, does that sibling share now go on to their children? And the answer is no, it doesn't. So by definition, the inheritors are those who are alive at the point where the muwarrith, the person who's leaving the wealth behind, he dies. So no, it wouldn't. No, Allah.
Okay. As a parent, this is from Sister Iqbal. Salam alaikum, Shaykh.
Before that one, sorry, Afwan Jawad, we just go too further down. Because it's on the theme of inheritance. 838.
Can an illegitimate child inherit from the father's wealth?
No, if a child is defined Sharia as illegitimate, then no, that child will only inherit from his or her mother. Wallahu a'lam. Likewise, if that child was raised by adopted or fostered and so on, there'd be no inheritance there. It's only through the mother that child would inherit.
So when we talk about illegitimacy, we're talking about illegitimacy to the father's line. It will never be to the mother's line.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The mother's the mother.
Yeah.
Born from so the line to the mother's not. When in a sense it's switched over, because normally your nesab, your line is always your father's line. You are your father's son or daughter. So your line will always go through there, except in this case, except in the case of illegitimacy, and that's agreed by all four, that the illegitimate child has no nesab, has no line back to his biological father. Allah.
So the question was, as a parent, what's the best Quranic or Sunnah dua to read for guidance for our children? My boy is only 6 years old, and I find he is easily influenced by his companions, which is within school parameters I can't control. this has led him to situations where he's clearly pushing boundaries. What can I read?
So, Dr. Javed, before I answer, what can I read? As a successful father of 5,
A long way to go yet.
I'm talking to you, and you've managed to rein them in from going beyond the boundaries. Any quick points of advice to the sister? Other than beating them and screaming.
Yeah, I mean, school's a difficult one, isn't it? And I think I've not had that experience of sending the younger kids to school. First one, the eldest one's only just started going to school, so we had a chat with him about some of the things he might see or hear. But up until then, they were homeschooled, so that made it a bit easier in my situation. But controlling the environment is definitely the most important thing. And they spend so much time at school, so even if you send them to school, you've got to find ways of mitigating that, because the Prophet ﷺ says that a person is on the deen of his friend. Yeah, a person is on the deen of his friend. It's very difficult. I used to be very sida sada until I started hanging around with you. So it's
Hold on a second.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm speaking
No,
truth. Yeah, I'm speaking the truth.
Although, sorry, can I just mention one thing here? I must take credit. I think it was me. Your passion for Liverpool, has it come from me?
Yeah. Somewhat.
At least we converted.
I didn't follow football before, but now I speak like an expert.
Yeah. So you got no answer to the sister, right?
That's difficult. Yeah, maybe perhaps you've got something.
Well, she asked for a dua. Yeah, read. I always advise this for the over 40s, and it's a dua of the Quran. Surah Al-Ahqaf, verse 15. Surah Al-Ahqaf, verse 15. ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وأصلح لي في ذريتي. That's the important part. أصلح لي في ذريتي. Take care of or correct and rectify and my children, my offspring for me. Read that dua, Surah Al-Ahqaf, verse 15, the second half of it. Read that dua, and I advise read that within your prayer as well. In sujood, you're praying nafil, read in your sujood. My own personal practice, the closing dua of the prayer. For the last few years, I don't read Rabbi Ja'alni Muqim as-Salah. I just read that dua. ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي. The key part, and take care and correct my children for me. And what's so significant about that dua is that the ayah itself says حتى إذا وبلغ 40 سنة. That when he reaches 40 years of age, he says this dua. So me and Dr. Javed, we're past 40. That's the instruction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Read this dua. So the dua of Surah Al-Ahqaf, verse 15. Sister Aisha, please read that dua in your prayer, alter your prayer as often as possible.
There's also in the Quran, a bit more general, but رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْوَهَّابُ. Yeah. That's actually what I read at the end of the prayer.
MashaAllah.
Hassan's brought up a popular one that came up last time we were on, which is about illegally streamed stuff, games, movies, sports, and you were going to look into that sometime in 2021.
No, give me 10 more years or so watching all that stuff.
Okay, so we're not ignoring that. That's we're going to look into that.
I will do, inshallah. I'll try and make a point of looking into that properly.
Oh, this is a nice one. I'm 14, mashallah, and trying to do his, but finding it hard because I'm so lazy all the time, and I don't know how to stop this laziness.
Okay, simply, whoever is anonymous attendee is, send an email into Rawdah Trust and ask them. We'll share or we'll send a dua. There is dua hifz al-Quran, salah hifz al-Quran. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he taught us a way of doing hifz al-Quran. such that a person doesn't forget. Sayyidina Ali, and he struggled to memorize the Quran. And then when the Prophet ﷺ told him 3, 5, or 7 consecutive weeks on the Jum'ah night to pray Salah Hifz al-Quran, the prayer in which you read 4 surahs, they're fairly long, like Surah Yasin, Surah Mulk, Surah, I think it's Hamim, Sajda, and Surah Dukhan, I think they are. And then there's a dua that the Prophet ﷺ taught. And inshallah ta'ala, if a person reads the Salat Hifz al-Quran and dua Hifz al-Quran, inshallah ta'ala, memorization becomes easy for that person. And the only reason why I say that, there's other things you can say on that, but whenever our teacher Shaykh Samir al-Nas is asked that question about, and that's mashallah min ahli al-Quran, inshallah, from the people of the Quran, that's his trade answer, his standard answer, just do Salah Hifz al-Quran and dua Hifz al-Quran, because that was the advice that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave. Wallahu a'lam. So if you share your email, or send an email into Rawdah Trust, and inshallah ta'ala, we'll try and get something sent to you.
Okay. There was one also on recitation. Yeah, okay. Can a woman who's menstruating recite the ratib?
Yes, she can. Yeah. Yeah. Hold on a second. Just 1 second.
But just as a reminder, while Shaykh Haroon's busy, if we get some questions and we get follow-up questions, we're not always able to deal with all the sort of follow-up questions all the time, just because we want to try and get through as many of the other native questions as we can. Whiplash.
Before Whiplash, more important, I've just got me burger and chips ordered in. Am I allowed to have this while we're doing the session?
Yes, tafaddal.
Okay, sure, it's coming in a second. Go on. Whiplash.
But importantly, is it HMC?
No idea. It comes from Black Star Pizza down the road, so I don't think so.
Yeah. Whiplash, I think by this they mean whiplash claims.
Yeah.
Is it permissible?
As long as it's not a false claim, it's permissible. I've seen some fatawi from some ulama, which is very interesting, which said it's permissible provided it's not. You have what's called a diya. A diya is an amount and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam set. So it's fairly detailed in terms of mistaken killing of a person, or the Quran speaks of al-juruha qisas, that if there's wounds, there's retaliation, but there's also payments that's made if there's permanent damage to a limb of a person. So there's detail about that, provided it doesn't go beyond that amount, because that's what a Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said. So in principle, yes. Allahu A'lam.
We've got a question from Yusuf. Assalamu alaikum. How can we not particularly dislike an atheist person that's dear to our non-Muslim mother and try to be merciful? And how can we, in general, prevent being arrogant for the fact that we're Muslim and see they're
Go and answer that one while I get my food order in. Just make a few comments there and then I'll come back to you.
The important thing to remember in terms of everyone's situation, whether they're Muslim, whether they're part of a deviant sect, whether they're non-Muslim, kafir, mushrik, atheist, whatever, that condition, that that guidance or lack of guidance is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what should humble us, that there's nothing that we've done that has made us that we are guided. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen us, and there's no guarantee that we will we'll see the end of our days as being guided. And that should be it should put a bit of fear and humility in us. There's the thing that always reminds me when these questions come up is the account of Shaykh Abdullah al-Andalusi, who is a Shaykh of Shaykh Shibli and Shaykh Junaid Baghdadi. And so there's a really nice account written up by Shaykh Jibril Fawad Haddad. So I recommend people reading it. But in short, he has thousands of students in Baghdad, and he went with a great number of them through some villages, and he came upon a Christian village. And as he passed through the Christian village, he went to get some water from a well, and there was some young girl serving water from the well. And he became infatuated with one of the girls serving water from the well. And he couldn't contain himself. And he locked himself in a room, and his murids, and who were shuyukh in themselves at that time, became concerned about him. And he told them, in short, to go back to Baghdad and to kind of stay away from him, because he didn't want to affect them and their iman. So they left, and they were heartbroken. And some people report that people even died when they heard that he had lost his faith at that time. He wanted to marry this girl. That was the other thing. And the condition for marrying it, because her father was the Christian leader of that village, was that the person must serve the church, and he must herd the pigs, and various other things. So he did that. And so after being the teacher of some of the greatest awliya of our time, of that time, he did that. Sometime afterwards, some of the murids came back to check on him, and they found him in the woods herding the pigs with the same sort of staff that he'd used for Jummah khutbah. And they asked him about his situation. And he'd forgotten all the Quran that he'd done hifz of, and he'd forgotten all of the hadith that he'd learnt except one. And they spoke with him, but they didn't, it's interesting, they didn't belittle him, they didn't berate him, but they spoke with the kind of concern that a person would have for someone who's in a really bad situation. And again, they left him feeling sad and heartbroken, and they headed back towards Baghdad. And they came upon a river. And when they came upon the river, they saw a man coming out of the river, having done ghusl. And it was the sheikh that they just left. And he'd been given his iman back. And they said, what was this whole thing that happened? And this is the point that comes back to the original question. Is that when I came to the village, I kind of, thought, what are these people? What are they worshipping? How reprehensible? How? And he was kind of looking down on them. So then he said, I heard a voice say, well, if you think any of this guidance that you've got is from what you've done, then, have a look at this. And then he said he felt the iman fly out of his heart. Just literally in an instant. And so this is the kind of concern and fear that we have. And I think especially in this day and age, it's more common to see people, one day they're probably the most, they're on the streets doing dawah, doing this, doing that, and doing websites and things in the cause of dawah of Islam. And then they lost their faith. So something to be always frightened about.
Yeah. So Jazakallah khair. It's actually such a frightening story when you hear that. So in terms of dealing with non-Muslims, alhamdulillah, instead of just looking down on other people, just be grateful to Allah subhanahu that He's allowed you to be a believer, and feel pity on that person. Feel pity on that person that he's not a believer, and have concern in your heart, and wish that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him what He's given you. Wallahu alam.
Right. Is it makruh tahrim to clean shave?
Yeah, for the Hanafis, yeah. On the basis that keeping a beard is wajib, so then yes, it would be makruh tahrim. Yeah.
And
but let me just add to that as well. Yes, it is wajib, and yes, it is makruh tahrim. But it shouldn't be made almost like an essential of faith. Like I think I mentioned this here before, and Shaykh Samr al-Nas, when I asked him that question, I think it was something to do with the beard, the length of the beard, and keeping the beard. He said, Shaykh Hadib Kallas, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned that the beard in relation to our religion is like the salad in relation to the food. It's there to complete it. It's not a meal by itself, but it's there to complete. So yes, the beard is important, and it is makruh tahrim not to, but keeping a beard and being the most arrogant of all person, most rude and disrespectful and so on, it misses the point completely. Allah.
Right. So if I want to start an e-commerce business and I have a name for it, but the trading name with Company's House, I want that to be different and something that has barakah in it. Where can I find a name? And do you have any suggestions?
Depends what you're trading in.
Cannabis.
Yeah, cannabis. It depends what you're trading in. So yeah, it's something that has barakah in it. Speak to the people of knowledge, speak to the people of blessings and guidance, and then ask them. It's unrelated to that, and again, I think we've discussed this before. Like names of children, for example, people are just choosing random names. The most beautiful of all names, Abdullah, Fatima, and so on. People aren't interested in that. There's so much blessing to be found within names. And go to the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask for them to select blessed names. Allahu Akbar.
Baji is lurking online again this week.
Yeah, I saw that. And
yeah.
And I think we've agreed. I think we agreed. Any questions coming from your sister, go see you. Like no, because I tried my best to answer the questions in madrasa. So, sister, alhamdulillah, you had your chance in micro madrasa. Now you're back to your brother.
Okay. Is eating kosher meat only permissible if halal meat is not available, or would it be considered equal to eat? Would it be the same as eating halal meat? I think what she's saying.
If the kosher meat meets the requirements of halal, then kosher is synonymous to halal. And the definition of halal meat is any meat that a Muslim, a Christian, or a Jew has slaughtered of a halal animal. It's slaughtered across the throat, cutting 3 of the 4 veins, the 2 arteries in the side of the wind and the food pipe, having said Bismillah, having mentioned the name of Allah. So if a Jew did that, then it would be lawful. So Jewish rabbis, they're the ones who slaughter for kosher meat, and they read a benediction, they read a prayer, they generally read a prayer before, which does not have within it any type of kufr. So in principle, kosher meat is halal. Allah. So the idea, is it a fallback if you don't have halal meat? No, by definition, it is halal. It is halal, and especially now, a lot of the alleged halal meat doesn't seem to be that halal when everything's getting passed off as being halal. Allah.
It's just worth mentioning with kosher stuff that there are some things that they're allowed that we aren't allowed, like alcohol. Sure. Right. In particular.
But we're talking about meat, aren't we? So you're
but sometimes there might be meat products which they use wine or alcohol in the cooking process. It's just to be wary. And also, it's not so much of a problem in the UK, but the kosher, the people who kind of certify kosher products in America, there are some sort of the liberal movements that have their own certification process, and so they will say pork gelatin is fine, right? They won't have a problem with that. So I don't believe it's a problem in the UK, but I don't know too much.
That's similar to that's a similar problem with the Muslim, because you are going to have some, when I was saying that the vaccines that have pork gelatin and have undergone istihada, have undergone some type of change. So it's a similar issue there. Allah.
If you make a mistake in your surah whilst praying, should you do sajda sahu, or what is what should you do if you forget to do such a sahu?
What are you looking?
8:45.
8:45. Yeah. Okay, I can't see that. But anyway, if you make a mistake in the surah in terms of the word that you change the word, there's a lot of detail around the type of mistake. But some of the muta'akhirin, some of the later Hanifis, and a couple of my teachers gave fatwa on that, stated that there's no mistake that you make in terms of words when reading the Quran that will invalidate the prayer, or even require sajda. And especially because people so commonly make mistakes, that's usually the fatwa that's given. The early Hanafis, they had a lot of detail on the type of mistake. So you don't need to do sajda. Allahu a'lam.
So if you do a mistake that requires a sahu, and you forget to do the sajda, then what do you do?
If you're still sat there and you haven't moved away from your position of prayer, then, and you haven't spoken to anybody, turned away, or shook a hand with anybody, you've not done anything that takes you out of the prayer, then just go, then do the 2 sajdas and complete the prayer. And you return back into it. If you've moved away or done something else, then Imam al-Tahtawi, he mentions that there is no requirement. You're excused in that case, and there is no requirement to do anything further.
Okay.
So,
black flags. Oh. What is the significance of black flags and black turbans?
Black turbans. I think you're talking about end time scenarios there. So the reappearance of them. Black turbans here from Khurasan. They would appear from Khurasan. Yeah, Wallahu a'lam. I don't know the details on that, but if you're talking about the army that will come from Khurasan, which some contemporaries, they consider that to be the Taliban, because they're the black turban ones who've been carrying the black flags. Wallahu a'lam. Wallahu a'lam. It's to do with the end times, but I can't say much about that.
Ibrahim has asked a question. I've not heard this one before. It says, Assalamu alaikum. Please, is it true that it is only Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu that is to be called Amir al-Mu'mineen? And if so, why?
Yeah, I saw that question, and no, I've not heard. I've not. I've never heard that. Yeah. He was the first to be called Amir al-Mu'mineen, because the term Khalifa to Rasulullah was exclusively for Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He was the direct Khalifa of the Messenger. And then after that, he was called Amir al-Mu'mineen. And that's a title that's been used for all of the leaders of the Muslims after. So no, Allahu A'lam. First, yes, but only no. Allahu
A'lam. What if you don't know the surahs for this Allah Hifzul Quran? Can you recite any surahs?
No, you can't recite any surahs. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave us those 4 particular surahs. And so the secrets to memorizing the Quran is contained within those surahs. What I advise, and I genuinely advise this, is take the rukhsah of the Shafi'i. Take the allowance from the Shafi'i madhab, and hold the Quran or have it on a stand in front of you and read from it. Allahu Akbar.
Okay, this is I like this question. This is kind of brings up a lot of issues in our communities. It's about marriage. Most older men in their 40s to the 50s, including those with children who are getting married late in life, do not consider marrying a woman close to their own age. What advice can you give to Muslim women who are 40 plus and finding difficulty for the above reason? Many Muslim women have observed that non-Muslim men do not have the same hang-ups about age, and it would be far easier to get married to a non-Muslim, but it is not permissible.
Go on. What say you to that?
You know, I knew you were going to say that.
You dropped it.
Yeah.
You're the social commentator amongst them.
No, you know, look, at the end of the day, whatever, there are men who are struggling to get married, there are women struggling to get married, and I get, you know, I get this is a big issue. We shouldn't belittle it. However, first, let's just get one thing straight. As the questioner said at the beginning, it's not permissible, right? And there is no alternative view on that.
You mean about marrying non-Muslim?
As in, yeah, a Muslim woman marrying a non-Muslim thing, and mashallah, that the questioner made that quite clear. You know, what is our purpose in life? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to worship him, right? That is a question. Not everyone gets married, and some of the most remarkable people didn't get married. People like Rabi al-Adawiyya, and okay, she had some suitors, but the point there was she saw that she had a priority in her life. And sometimes when something doesn't work out for you, you have to kind of search for what are these priorities. So for instance, one of my teachers doesn't have children, and they took the opportunity to spend more time teaching, right? Because teaching automatically takes you away from your family, your children. I think one of the Habaib said that, you know, when some, is it Habaib or someone else who said that when you get married to a sheikh, you're like a second wife automatically, right?
All the women ask my wife that.
Yeah. And I don't think as students we appreciate the sacrifice that the rest of the family make, you know, for us, and for us being able to sit around and learn or have a laugh with you guys.
Hold on a second. Learn or have a laugh? Isn't it just meant to be learn and nothing else?
Yeah. It's not haram to enjoy learning.
All right.
But the point is, you know, we spend a lot of hours with our teachers, so you know, we're the family and all of that. So so that's the important thing, is trying to focus on or reflect on perhaps what Allah has in store for us in terms of our priorities. That doesn't mean to say don't look for a husband. And Muslim men, you know, and Muslim women, they will marry who they want to marry. It's very difficult to kind of force them. But if they're reared properly, and if the tarbiyah is good, then they will look for, you know, salient features in a spouse. Problem is that for generations we've been training people to look for the wrong things, look for dunya, and now we have the situation we have, right? So you know, people will say, you know, oh, you know, bro, find me a wife. I want to find someone who's really, you know, really spiritual. I want to be better, but really they just want someone who looks like a model.
Did you put on an accent there? Was that an attempted accent?
It just comes out sometimes.
Yeah, it was weak. How do you just about caught it?
Yeah. But you know, it's you know, so people say that they want something, but reality, very few people, you know, looking for the things that really matter in a marriage.
So
Shaykh, can you answer?
No, exactly. I think that says it all. It is. That's one of a number of societal problems within Muslim communities. For example, the problem of women who are divorced and who have children, nobody willing to marry them. There's an opposite problem to that, which is one of the reasons why it's getting more and more difficult to marry is that people out of choice are choosing to marry a lot later. There are other priorities that are seen in their lives, so it makes it so much more difficult when you're in your 30s and your 40s, and then that person starts actively looking for marriage. So there is whereas a sunnah is that as early as possible, especially in a place where there's so much fitting, there's so much tribulation. So yeah, these are societal problems that need dealing with. The elephant in the room that should always come out in a case like this is polygamy. Polygamy is there for that reason as well, that women need to become more accepting of it, because it's been legislated by Allah and His Messenger. And there's nothing wrong with what Allah has of legislated. No, it's good.
I mean, someone sort of commented in connection to that question, saying, as an unmarried woman in their 30s, I find it more difficult the way people treat us rather than not being married as such. I think that's a really fair point. Some people ask too many questions and they talk too much.
Yeah,
Same with children as well. You find people and they say, oh, have you got kids, right? So you've been married 6 months, what are you doing? It's like, it takes 9 months, mate. But it's people just ask, like, what's going on? What's wrong? And you're like, people need to rear in the their questions a little bit. Okay, love, you're the love Shaykh, aren't you? People ask you a lot of questions about love. I've noticed, right?
Love. So I've not heard any question about love.
Loads of questions. I dismiss most of them, right? But anyway, this one's important. I'm in school and I like a non-Muslim girl and I'm getting really attached. What shall I do?
Ask her to take the shahada. No, actually, that was a flippant answer. That. Where's all of these love questions? Honestly, I haven't seen any to do with love.
Not today. This is the first one. This is the first one today.
With all due respect, now you should understand that you're in school and you fall in love with some non-Muslim girl. Some boundaries need to come in place because realistically, first of all, you're not getting married. You're still in school. You're not getting married. And then on top of that, it's a non-Muslim girl as well. So you need to put some boundaries in place. You need to keep some distance between yourself and that girl to protect yourself from committing haram. Allahu Akbar.
Okay. If you get your hair chemically dyed, does it affect, wiping?
It depends. I mean, first of all, I'm hoping and assuming that's a female there. Because if it's a male, you shouldn't be getting your hair dyed. Then it depends upon whether it's actually created a physical barrier that stops water touching. If that chemical creates a physical barrier, then you'd have to make sure that you're dyeing a part where there is no barrier. Otherwise, you can't use that dye because then your wudu wouldn't be valid. However, if it's just a coloring where there's no actual physical barrier remaining, then you're okay. Then you're okay to wipe. Allahu
Akbar. Right. I'm a teacher in an Arab country and I'm getting in trouble for following work policies. My students are complaining I'm a strict teacher when it comes to grading work. And at the same time, I've got colleagues who are too lenient in grading, so therefore breaking the policies that work have set. Due to these student complaints, I've been told that the manager wants me fired. Is it haram to break work policies? There are times where I feel like if I give the students what they want, I could save my job, as there won't be any complaints.
As a general rule, say that if you're working somewhere, then you are required to follow the laws and policies of work, regulations of work. You are required to follow it. But in this case, because there's some type of zulm that's taking place here, some type of wrong that's taking place where the students are wrongfully complaining and their complaints has no basis, and the manager there, based upon what you're saying, and this is just taking on what you've said, your manager there is now going to act upon their word, perhaps out of fear of the parents, instead of investigating and checking and being careful. In that case, he would be allowed to become more lax and easier, because work is part of your rizq. That's one of the essentials. So in that type of situation, you may be allowed to do that. Allahu Akbar.
Subhanallah. This questioner is asking whether you can change your madhab from being a Hanafi to a Shafi'i for more ease.
Is it
more ease? That's the first question.
Yeah, Go and study purity in the Shafi'i madhab, and you suddenly realize it's not as easy as you thought. So that statement for more ease, there is no one madhab that's easy. Every madhab has elements of ease, every madhab has elements of difficulty within it. People generally only study one or two areas of fiqh, like they only study wudu, ghusl, prayer, and that's it. And then they start feeling that one madhab is easier. When you look at when you look across a madhab, there is no one madhab that's easy. So choosing a madhab should be based upon learning. Like you have access to a teacher who can properly teach you that madhab. If you do, then you're free. Imam al-Tahawi, and he changed from Shafi'i to Hanafi. The later Uthmaniyin, they used to apply ta'zir. They considered it a punishable crime to change madhab. So we may need to reintroduce that. Yeah, Allahu Alam. But yeah, no, as long as you're doing it, as long as you're moving to another madhab in that you have access to a teacher who can teach you that and you learn it properly, then alhamdulillah.
Who was Khalid ibn Walid's father?
Walid ibn Mughira.
Walid ibn Mughira.
He died as an unbeliever, spoken of in Surah Al-Muddathir. ثم نظر ثم عبس وبسر ثم أدبر واستكبر.
His brother became Muslim before him, right? Zayd.
Khalid bin Walid's brother.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. What does Wa Muhammad mean?
Wa Muhammadah.
Yeah.
That's istighatha bin Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's a call. Oh Muhammad. That's oh Muhammad. But it's a call for help, and that was the war cry of Sahaba in battle. Wa Muhammadah.
Is Shams Tabriz considered awliya, a wali?
I don't know anything about him. I know the name. I don't know anything about
him. If you forget to recite a surah in prayer, how do you rectify your prayer?
What does that mean?
I think maybe they've read Fatiha and they've gone down without reciting the surah that follows.
So there's some tafsir, some details on that. If you've gone into ruku and you remember to stand back up, read the surah, do your ruku again, finish the prayer and do sajda at the end. If you've gone all the way up until you've completed the first sajda of that rak'ah, then you cannot go back and you continue the prayer. If it's a fard prayer, Maghrib, Isha, Dhuhr, Asr, then read that surah in the third rak'ah after the Fatiha. Any other prayer you can't do that, but in both cases we've said the sahwa at the end. That's the answer with the Hanifis. Wallahu a'lam.
So with the fard prayer, is it preferable to read in the third rak'ah or preferable to get back up from ruku?
Depends how far down you've gone. If you've remembered in the ruku or in the qiyam, the qawma, or in the sajda, then you're required to get back up.
Right.
But once you've gone past the first sajda, then you cannot go back. Then you must continue and then read it in the third rak'ah if there's space. If not, then just do sajda at the end.
Okay. See, we've not done any Christmas stuff yet. What's the deal with halal turkeys? Quickly, because I've got mine on order.
Tashabbuh. I don't know. Is this? You might know this. In America, it's a goose. It's a Christmas goose, isn't it? Do they still?
No. In America, it's turkey. They're the ones who brought turkey over here. It used to be goose here.
Okay.
Used to be goose here, but now hardly anyone does that.
Yeah. So let's do halal Christmas goose on Boxing Day.
Yeah.
Push that with the Muslims.
Yeah, they don't know how to cook goose, I guess. That's the thing. But I think the argument that people will make is not the fact that they're trying to do copy the Christians, although that's what it looks like.
That's what it is.
But a lot of butchers don't provide turkey any other time of the year, so that's the only chance to try how tasteless and dry turkey actually is.
Well, that's what I've been told. It is tasteless and dry. So just don't do it. If you must, just don't cook it on Christmas Day. Don't eat it on Christmas Day. There has to be some type of distinction between us and tashabbuh. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, whoever imitates the unbelievers is one of them.
Okay, what about work? In the work place, obviously, there's people of different religions, and
Can we leave all of that until the 23rd? That's the.
All right, I thought you wanted to do it today.
No, there's quite a few decent questions, and we've only got about 15 minutes left.
All right. Okay.
And my burger's gone cold.
Okay. All right. So, what advice would you provide for a work colleague that's curious about Islam?
That's your one. That's yours.
I've give them contacts to people who can give dawah to them effectively. If you can do that yourself, alhamdulillah. If they're not the same gender, find someone who they can talk to. And do not go down that rabbit hole. Do not go down.
Don't you trust a brother?
Yeah. People's dawah genes always switch on, right? When it's but generally, if you're not confident about giving them dawah, then maybe introduce them to people who can, or even if there's a good book, which gives broad understanding of the Prophet ﷺ and religion. Don't bombard them with science in Islam. But that's my 2 pennies worth.
Can I just add there? Give them something to read about Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So essential that is, because a person, after he says La ilaha illallah, he still has to become. If a person says I believe there's one God, he's still not a Muslim. He's got to know Muhammad Rasulullah. So knowing about God does not automatically know about the messenger. It means that you'll know about the messenger. Whereas knowing about the messenger automatically means that that person become acquainted with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So give them something to read or discuss the messenger, talk about the Prophet. Allahu Akbar.
The rule for iddah for women, for women who are widowed, is there any specifics for the age of the woman?
No, there's no upper limits. And I was asked that recently about a really old woman. She was in her 70s. The same. My assumption was that it'd actually be easy because women who are older tend not to be as mobile and going out as much. But I think this particular one was that she has family nearby, so she tends to leave and goes to see them. So just get the family to come and see her. So yeah, the rules of iddah still apply. It's irrespective of age.
One question which is chasing up some clarification from last session, but if you email Rawdah Trust and with the same question, then Shaykh will get back to you on that, inshallah. For someone who goes to school but they have a kafara to perform, what should they do, because it's hard to fast for 60 days in school?
During the summer, you need a clear run of 2 months. So when you have a clear run of 2 months, normally advise during the winter, because that's the shorter months where it's a lot easier. But you're right, doing day after day after day fasting in school is going to be difficult. So if you can do it in the summer, which is a lot harder, July, August, after Ramadan, as long as you don't clash with the Eid, because if it clashes with the Eid, then it breaks the kafar.
All right. So this question is it okay to bury more than bury or bury? What would you want me to pronounce it like?
I'm gonna bury you, mate.
Is it okay to bury more than one person in a grave?
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's forbidden.
I don't know what they got planned, but just asking.
Except where in a time of time of disaster, in a war zone, for example, or in time of plague, where there's not enough space to bury more than one, then it's allowed. Like in Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had the martyrs buried together in Uhud. But even then, there has to be some type of separation, where there's a line of soil is placed between the bodies, so it becomes like graves within a grave. But as a standard rule, no.
There's two types of graves, right? There's one where you just bury down, and one where you bury down and cut into the side, and then put the body in that. Is that the way the Prophet ﷺ preferred, or are they both acceptable?
They're both allowed, but the sunnah is the lahad. The lahad where it's an L shape, you go down and you go into the wall. That's and that's how the Prophet was buried, and that's generally how it's done in the Muslim world. Allahu
Akbar. My boy got a vaccination letter for nursery about the flu jab. When reading the letter, says it's got pork in the pork one's not the jab. The pork one's the nasal spray.
That's the nasal spray.
Yeah.
So ask them for the injection, which doesn't have, because there's an alternative. So ask them for the alternative.
Yeah, right. Important one. I want to make an Islamic will. Can you please suggest any competent solicitors who have expertise in this field?
There's quite a few out there. Allahu Akbar. Off the top of my head, I can't think. But there's quite a few out there.
Praying with your shoes on, and any kind of sort of footwear. Is that okay?
There's a split amongst the Hanafis over that, and generally the ulama from the subcontinent forbid it. But some of my teachers in Sham, in Syria, including Shaykh and Shaykh Samar, they consider it permissible. And that's generally the view that I teach, that it's allowed to pray with shoes on. Yeah.
It's strange. I mean, Shaykh that I used to go to growing up, he's from the subcontinent, and he was like totally fine with that. I never even mentioned that there's a possibility of it being allowed. Is that like a subcontinent thing, or is it actual a madhab thing? There's a difference of opinion in the madhab.
It's a fairly new development, wearing shoes the way that they wore now. It's over the last couple of centuries. Before there was sandals and slippers that people wore.
Yeah.
So it's not something you tend to find mentioned in the books of fiqh traditionally.
So let's say you're wearing regular socks, okay, but they're not hoofs or anything like that. You put your shoes on. Your shoes are hard wearing enough.
See, the whole issue revolves around the fact that in Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he prayed in sandals. He did, that's confirmed. There's no dispute about that. But the issue is that the description of his sandals indicated that his toes touched the ground, directly touched the ground, whereas with shoes, they're covered over, and there's a thickness that when you do sajda with your shoes, your toes are not actually feeling the ground. That's where the dispute is.
But are your toes touching the ground when you wear leather hoofs or any kind of hoofs? Not really.
You can still feel it. You can still feel, whereas with shoes you can't. I think that's the reason why there's a disagreement.
All right. Okay. Okay. So the scholars in Sham that say it's permissible. Do they give any clarification? Are there any conditions to the shoes? Like, I mean, Molana who said that you can pray in shoes, he said you should be able to bend your toes.
Yeah, I've heard that, but I didn't hear that detail. But I've heard that said as well.
Okay, Salam Sheikh, I've been married for 36 years and just come to some sort of understanding. It takes time. I have had a lot of patience. The youth today want instant understanding.
Dr. Saab, how long have you been married for? I'm going to try to do that before.
14 years.
I'm ahead of you then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 16 years. 16 years.
Yeah, it's hard work. Yeah, it's always hard work. Yeah,
you or for the wife?
Probably harder for her, mashallah. Very patient person. Yeah, it probably feels like 36 years to her, right? But it feels like only yesterday to me. So, okay. Yeah, okay. What was the age of Sayyidatuna Aisha radiallahu anha when she married the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? We often hear different ages.
No, well, no. All of these ages have appeared now because of different culture that we live in now, and it's generally accepted she was a minor, 6 years of age when the aqd took place, and then yeah, and that's it. Right? So even though now people feel uncomfortable and start creating all these different ages that she was, just because the times that we live in, it doesn't change the reality. What I find interesting about that is that it was never seen as a problem in those times. It's a problem now because society and civilization has changed in terms of what's right and wrong. Whereas our belief is, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is what's right and wrong. If he determines it's right, then it's right, and if he doesn't, then it's wrong. So if he did it, it's good. Polygamy is good because he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did it. Marriage with a minor is perfect, yeah, acceptable and fine because he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did it. Allahu Akbar.
Prayers that need to be made up, can they be read at any time? For example, can I read Qadha for Fajr at Isha time or not?
At what time?
At Isha time, can they do some Fajr Qadha as well?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. There's no requirement that you have to do Qadha of a particular prayer within the equivalent prayer time. So Zuhr and Zuhr Asr. Or you can do any prayer in any time. But the three forbidden times, the makruh times, like straight after Fajr, just before Zuhr, and at the end of Asr, they're the times when you can't do Qadha. And it wouldn't be valid to do Qadha at that time.
Well, if you've only literally got one Qadha to do, then if you've only, but the order matters. If you I've only got a few Qadhas to do, right? The order matters. You got to do them in order.
Yeah. How many? Let me ask you. Let me just test you. How many is that? What's a small number where the order matters?
I'd say 5 prayers.
Yeah, 5 or less prayers.
Yeah. Sidi Luqman is asking, Salam alaikum Shaykh, is it permissible to recite a surah after Fatiha in the 3rd and 4th rak'ah of Fard prayer?
Yes, it's permissible. It's khilaf al-sunnah. It's not sunnah. It's not sunnah, but it's permissible. For the Hanafis, that's makruh tanzih. It's discouraged, but it's not sinful.
In the Shafi madhab, is kafara ever required?
Yes. Sexual intercourse. Kafara of breaking the fast, intentionally sexual intercourse, yes. Eating and drinking doesn't require a kafara for the Shafis. Well, sexual intercourse, yes.
What's your opinion on Islamic banks? Are they legit? That's for Qasim. Qasim, I think.
Who's out? No, this is Qasim from Warrington.
Is it?
Who's out? Qasim, by the way.
Qasim from Macro. With the curly hair.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it might be him. Depends. That's too broad a question. Depends on the particular service, the products that they're offering. So, Allah, it depends. That's too broad a question.
What's Salam alaikum. This is from Adnan Ahmed. Salam alaikum, Shaykh Haroon. Please, can you clarify what the ruling is on children and women attending graveyards?
Children, Salam Adnan. Yes, children can be taken to graveyards, yes. Sheikh Dr. Javed, what's the fatwa on women going to graveyards?
Permissible. Not obviously at the burial, but they're permitted to go.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. So women should not be present at the burial. That's makruh tahrim, it's severely disliked. But after that, visiting is allowed. That was the original view in the madhab. The later Hanifis forbade it, but the original view in the madhab is that it's allowed. Wallahu.
And Majid Khan is asking, again, connected to footwear, if there's any najasa on your footwear, Does that change anything? If there is, how much are you allowed?
And most people, when you say that wearing shoes and prayers are allowed, they raise the issue about najasa, but that's the same issue with khuffayn, the same issue with socks. There's no difference there. Anything that you're wearing in your feet that's got najasa or more than the size of a dirham coin, a silver coin, then that must be washed away.
But we don't assume it. We don't assume that there's najasa just because being walking around outside.
You shouldn't just assume, you know. You need to know it. Shall we just do some quick fire ones? Because
yeah. If you see anyone, just shout them out.
Let me ask you this first. One of the questions, 919, what is your favorite science and why? Yours?
I hope they're asking about Islamic sciences and not science.
I've got no.
It's a tough one. I'm torn between tafsir and sirah. I can't decide between the two.
Yeah, no, for me, 100% tafsir Quran.
And Arabic's not a science; it's an art. Isn't that right?
It is. Yeah. When you move into the realms of Ibn Hisham, then it becomes.
Yeah. What's yours?
Yeah, tafsir Quran.
Yeah,
undoubtedly. Let me just go back to 835. Wa alaykum salam. You might remember I asked a question about which opinion you should follow for breaking the fast by masturbation. One of the opinions that I learned that you said I had never heard of was from a particular ustad. And first of all, in future, don't mention names. And then the second thing, what I mentioned is what I know. So if you want to go back to the ustad and ask him maybe some type of reference or respectfully ask him. I'm not going to say his opinion is wrong. I know him. I respect him a lot, mashallah. So just ask him. Like, what's the basis? And just let him know that you've asked a teacher, and he mentioned these opinions, and he said that wasn't there in the madhab. So ask him about that one. Allahu
A'lam. Is it permissible to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take someone's soul if you can see they're suffering greatly over a long period of time and you want them to go to a better place?
Yes, it is permissible. Especially when a person is dying and just going through a lot of pain and stuff. Yes, that is allowed.
Can I ask a question in relation to that?
Yeah.
I mean, I know we want to think that people are going to a better place, but what if your dua is accepted and they're like that far away from getting to Jannah, but not quite there, and the next day or two could have helped? I mean, we don't really know.
So you're talking about a Muslim who's dying?
Yeah, no, I'm saying a Muslim who's dying, but if, for instance, they, it could be that, they could do with extra days of, because illness and suffering, it's, it does it not erase our sins?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So what's your point?
I mean, should we be making dua because maybe there's a purpose behind it or there's a reason behind it? Maybe we should ask the person as well.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, it's a fair point.
Yeah.
It is permissible, but your point is right. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he went through so much physical pain in the last moments of his life. Majid Khan asked the question, are you allowed to do masah at normal socks? Normal socks, no, because normal socks are thin socks, which means that the wetness will be felt underneath. So no, it's not valid. 940, the question, what's the rule when someone wants to take shahada who's transgender? There are worse things than being transgender. Homosexuality is worse. Murder is worse. But the door of Islam is open to all. So that's a problem itself. Like that lifestyle choice is a problem itself. But in terms of shahada. Like, a Muslim who's transgender, inshallah, has some hope with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So shahada is not predicated on actions or ways that person is. Like a transgender person has every right to become Muslim. Then there's a separate discussion once that person become Muslim about that choice. Wallah.
Is it haram to have pictures and photos in the house?
There are some views that are, the original view of many of the ulama was that it is haram, but the general view of ulama now is that it's allowed. Allah.
Okay. Hifz or tajweed, which takes precedence?
Whichever allows you to read more Quran. So if doing more hifz means that you're going to read more Quran, then that's better, even though your tajweed may not be up to scratch. But if tajweed is going to help you to enjoy the Quran more, and as long as you're not doing what's called lahm jali, you're not making like major blunders in the Quran. Because usually when we talk about tajweed, we're talking about higher standard. So whichever allows you to read more Quran, that's the more important.
What are the required sunnah or the required actions or the sunnah actions for parents on the birth of a child?
Sunnah actions on birth of a child is read the adhan into the right ear, iqam into the left ear. Just rub a date or something sweet at the point of birth. It's preferable, it's not a requirement, but it's preferable that 7 days later to shave the hair and to give some sadaqah for the child. And after just one, because it's really annoying me now, and choose the best of names for the child, because people come up with all kind of wacky names now. And what's weird now is people just don't want to choose the best names. Like, call your child Abdullah, call your child Fatima. Everybody wants any other name except for the best names. Choose the best name for your children.
MashaAllah. That's I can't remember who told us this, but is that the first thing a parent will be asked about with respect to their children?
It's one of the most important things they'll be asked about.
What was it? Is dam required if someone in ihram cut another person's hair to get them out of a state of ihram, and they themselves are still in a state of ihram?
Last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
So the answer is no. I understand. The answer is no. If somebody is bringing another person onto the ihram, then no, it's fine. There's no dam required.
How long after a person has passed should inheritance be distributed? What are the implications of this not being distributed in a timely manner for the deceased?
There's no time period in terms of distribution. The important thing is to ensure that anybody who wants their share is entitled to, or is allowed to receive their share. That may not always be straightforward if there's like property or land or other things. So that may take a while. So there's no real problem for the deceased in terms of delay, as long as everybody gets what they're entitled to.
And what is the? Let me see. I've lost it now. What is the Sunni opinion on the 12 imams of Ahlul Bayt? I think what they mean is that, the 12 imams that the Shia, talk about.
We do not consider them to be imams of the Shia. We consider them to be imams of Ahlul Sunnah.
Yeah, I mean, he did say Ahlul Bayt, but I think that's what, when he said that the number 12, I think he means the ones that they name. What is the story behind the revelation of Surah Abasa? How is that to be understood?
ترك الفضيلة ترك الأفضل للفضيلة. That Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't choose the best option. The best option would have been to teach the blind Sahabi. That would have been the higher, but he still chose a praiseworthy and an acceptable option. Allahu Akbar.
What if you forget the number? Which numbers of rakahs you've done in prayer?
If it's the first time that it's ever happened to you, then repeat that prayer. It invalidates your prayer. If it's happened on repeated occasions, then try immediately to figure out which one it is, which rakah, and then go with whatever you think is most likely and do sajda at the end. If you have no idea, then go with a low number, and then do and consider that your rak'ah and do sajda at the end.
What's better whilst reading salawat, to mix various duroods, sharifs, or to stick to one all the way through?
يعني شيخنا حبيب كاظم السقاف حفظه الله تعالى, he advised mixing. He advised mixing. He said every time you read different salawat, the angel that carries salawat goes back and mentions your name to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So he advised mixing, changing.
Hassan's been really patient and he's been wanting this answer on cannabis products. What's the ruling on CBD products? The halal or haram?
CBD products, the intoxicating agents is removed out of it. So provided it doesn't intoxicate, then it's lawful to use. طيب عفوا شيخ, even though there's a few more questions, we're gonna have to stop at this point. And we'll see everybody again, inshallah ta'ala, in 2 weeks, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us alive and allows us to meet up again. And the theme will be Christmas. It's the 23rd. It will be Wednesday, the 23rd of December. So we can have a lengthy, detailed discussion about Christmas. But in the meantime, just remember we're Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored us. So there is some overlap activities that have no connection whatsoever to religion. But just remember we're Muslims. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Jazakallahu khairan.
Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.